Hi, my name is Jacqueline Anderson, and for my project, I interviewed Mike Patz, who is a pastor at Greenhouse Church. So the reason I interviewed him, 10 years ago, Greenhouse was actually a small church called First Assembly of God, and since then it has flourished from a congregation of about 200, 300 people to over 1,000, 2,000 members of the church. And there are over six separate campuses just for Greenhouse. And I think that's amazing. I think the best leaders are able to make that kind of transition from such a small church to such a big leadership where people are growing immensely. It's not just a shallow thing that people are involved in. It's people invest their time and their effort, and they're so deep into this organization. And so something that I really got from him as I interviewed him, he was just so kind. He cared about my assignment, and I was so surprised. When I walked in, I talked to the lady at the front desk, and I told her that I was here for my interview, and not even 5 seconds later, Mike walks out and he just shakes my hand and he's like, "Hey, how are you? Come in, we're doing this for an assignment, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He says, "So tell me a little bit about your assignment. Why did you choose me? Why did you take this class? In what ways are you a leader?" And he just kind of asked me about my life before I even got the chance to ask him about his. And I thought that was so cool because he just really he cared about me, and he wanted to know about my life. And so something that the characteristics that he talked about during this interview, he said that there are the people that they look for when they hire, they do 3 C's. One is their curiosity, how curious they are to learn, how curious they are to really dive into anything they are asked to do. The second is the chemistry, and that's just kind of like the relationship. Like, you get to know the relationship of someone when you first meet them, and you know if it's like a good or bad, or if it's just like not gonna work out. And so he really takes that into consideration, which I think is awesome first impression. And then the last C is compassion. Are they compassion for people? Do they love others? Are they able to understand where somebody's coming from? Are they able to compassionately lead someone up, compassionately grow them, empower them into being just an awesome person and follower for Christ? And Mike cares so much about people, and I think that's one of his leadership styles. The way that he leads is through growth and empowerment. He talks about when he plants his churches, he finds people who love Jesus and are passionate about preaching, and are passionate about growing the church and growing God's kingdom. And so he empowers them. He takes them and he lets them watch him, how he develops sermons and develops the thought process. And he really empowers them in the sense of he preaches one week and then they'll preach the next week. And he just goes on this trend and this pattern of letting them preach more until they preach all the time. And sometimes he'll have churches that really they video him online, and I think that's so cool because at a certain point Mike goes to them and he's like, "I know that you guys like hearing from me, and I know you guys like to hear what I say, but I think that you can do it now." And he shows them that they have a passion, and he just empowers them in a way that is incredible. And most people don't know how to do that because they're so they're not humble, and they're not understanding that it's not just about them, it's about the community, and it's about in our case God's kingdom as a whole. I mean, I love that about Mike. And something interesting that he said in his interview, he said that he's always willing to learn. He was telling me that he does these things like iTunes U, I have heard of it before, but I've never done anything with it. And basically, you take auditory classes from places like Yale and Harvard, and you can potentially take notes and take it like a normal class. And it's free. You can just listen in on it, which I think is really cool. But he says he takes the time. He says some semesters he's just like, I'm going to take a class, and he takes a class and he sets aside time to spend in this class, and he sets aside time to take the notes. And he said sometimes I fall a little behind, and that it happens, especially if you're not taking exams or you're not doing assignments for this work. It happens. But he says he really sets goals for himself. He's Along with the learning, he tries to read a book a week, which I think is incredible. Something really that I look up to him for, because I do know it's hard to read a book a week, let alone take classes on iTunes U, let alone leading a congregation of over 2,000 people. On top of that, like Mike has 8 kids, and he sets aside time for his personal life and his family, on top of being a great leader in his community. Another thing that I thought was really cool is he talked about the mentor that he had. Mike's mentor was actually the guy who was the pastor at First Assembly when it was, before Mike was. And I was asking him, I said, hey, like, did he expect you to lead the church exactly how he did? Because I do know that that's hard sometimes. And he said, no. My mentor, he let me be me, and he never made me feel as if I needed to lead the church in a way that he led it. And so he said as soon as he became full-time pastor and he was transitioned into that, he took away things like the preschool and the school. He said, I didn't feel like that was glorifying God in a way that our church needed to move, and I felt that it was hindering us from reaching more people, he said. And so I just did things like that. I became in my own leader, in my own person, because there are people in my life that influenced me to do things my own way, and know that each leader has their own specific attributes, and they have things that they do differently, and that's okay, because it makes the church in any organization a lot more individualistic, and you can see the different aspects or the different strengths that everyone has, and so it can really grow the organization when you have different leaders like that, to be better and to be the best that it can be. And I loved interviewing Mike Patz. It was an incredible time. I got to ask him questions that I never thought that I would have the time to just sit down and have his full attention on me, to understand who he is as a person, who he is as a leader. So I really enjoyed this assignment. Thank you guys for letting us be able to do this. Bam.